I think what people see in that video is that I'm sort of yanked before I'm handcuffed. But what people don't see is that I'm shoved twice against a wall before that. And the reason my staffer took out her phone to record was because I was already being physically assaulted by that ICE agent. That they are arresting folks without any due process, without any signed judicial warrant, violating people's rights, working above the law. What we're actually seeing is a lot of lawlessness by these federal agents.
You want to see what real independent journalism funded by the people for the people looks like?
You ever heard a story like this in America?
You're looking at it.
Congratulations for always being somewhere where mainstream media is not.
Flint, Michigan.
See you in Nevada.
Thanks to people like you, we can get the truth. Corporate media, they've been lying to us for years, and you're going straight to the people.
You are the man. I'm glad you're here.
For as low as 16 cents a day, you'll keep us on the ground, covering the important stories the corporate media covers up.
So I'm here with Alder Jesse Fuentes, who represents the 26th Ward in Chicago. But that's not the reason that we're here talking to you today. We're here talking to you today because last Friday, you were arrested by ICE.
Burn your laws. He has constitutional rights.
No.
He has constitutional rights. Do you have a sign?
No. You need to leave.
For me.
Turn around. You're turn around and leave.
He is under.
I'm going to arrest you if you not leave.
You are going to be placed under arrest.
Do you have a sign? Judicial warrant for him.
Can somebody go in the hallway and get Lisa for me, please?
Judicial warrant for him.
Can somebody go in the hallway and get Lisa for me? This is an older person who's being under arrest. I need my other staffer who's in the hallway by registration to come here, please.
Did they ever give you a reason as to why?
No, absolutely not. Well, first and foremost, I arrived at the hospital actually at the request of the president of Humboldt Park Health, who had made me aware that ICE was in the emergency room and that was scaring patients, it was scaring staff, it was making people nervous, and that the ICE agents had not shown any sort of documentation for the individual that they were detaining in that emergency room. So when I made my way there, my ultimate goal was to understand sort of the circumstances that got ICE to be in the emergency room and the circumstances that forced them to detain the individual. And so when I asked if they had a signed judicial warrant, not only were they responding to the question or didn't produce anything, but they met me with a lot of aggression.
You are hurting. I am asking. I am not.
Can somebody get my staffer, please?
This is a hospital. Do you have a signed judicial warrant for him? I am asking. I am asking. I did not touch you.
We told you to leave.
I did
You're
not touch
impeding.
you.
Now you're
I
under
did
arrest
not
for
touch you.
impeding.
I did
Thank
not
you.
touch you.
Where-
I asked you if you had a
Is
signed
Lisa still out there?
judicial warrant for him. It is very simple. It is very simple. That man has constitutional rights. I did not touch you. It is a public space. I am not trespassing. I am asking you, do you have a signed judicial warrant?
I think what people see in that video is that I'm sort of yanked before I'm handcuffed. But what people don't see is that I'm shoved twice against a wall before that. And the reason my staffer took out her phone to record was because I was already being physically assaulted by that ICE agent. It was important to me to remain calm and to exert my rights, to articulate them out loud and to force them to have to respond to me. So when they handcuffed me, I asked multiple times in the emergency room and when they took me out towards the vehicle, well, can you tell me what did I do? What am I being charged for, right? I wasn't impeding on an arrest. I didn't touch you physically. I'm not trespassing. Yeah, exactly what are you detaining me for? When we got outside of that emergency room, I was met with Border Patrol agents who pulled up in the vehicle, tried to get me inside the vehicle. And there's a point where ICE agents, myself, and Border Patrol, we're sort of debating, am I going to get in this back seat? And when they could not articulate to me what exactly I had done wrong, the Border Patrol agent requested that the handcuffs be removed. And so while shortly detained, I was never arrested or charged with anything. You know, this is a common pattern and behavior we're seeing of ICE agents and Border Patrol in the city of Chicago is that they are arresting folks without any due process, without any signed judicial warrant, violating people's rights, working above the law. What we're actually seeing is a lot of lawlessness by these federal agents. And I didn't know if I was going to come out of that situation without ending up at a processing center or even being arrested or being charged with some trumped up charges. What we are seeing in the city of Chicago and what we seen earlier that day was individuals on work sites citizens or not, being picked up because they're brown and Spanish speaking. The individual that ended up in the emergency room with his leg shattered has temporary protected status and filed for a renewal. No criminal record, but got picked up because he was a laborer and he was brown. Right now, my priority has been making sure that the individual that's in the hospital gets legal representation. It's been several days. It's about to be a week, actually. He still has not spoken to a lawyer. ICE agents are not letting an attorney speak to him. They have not allowed him to make one phone call, and they're giving medical staff a hard time when they speak to him in Spanish. These are the type of constitutional violations that people are seeing.
What power do you have in your office to be able to help him? You put your own freedom there on the line, where you're detained, you don't know if you're going to be arrested. You're stepping up in that capacity, but you still see the abuse happening. What avenues still exist for you to try and help not only that man, but everybody else within your ward?
Yeah, absolutely. We've brought several legal teams together, as well as congressional offices, the Office of Congresswoman Delia Ramirez, Senator Dick Durbin, and Senator Duckworth, to come together to ensure that we can sort of fight the constitutional violations that we're seeing in this particular case and in many other cases across the city. We are finding that we're winning some lawsuits in the courtroom. And so right now we're working with the attorneys and the staff of Duckworth's office to make sure that we can get legal representation for the individual that's in this hospital.
The Trump administration claims that there is turmoil on the streets are not based in reality. Basically, they're lying. We have peaceful protesters. Our law enforcement are more than capable of doing their job. If Donald Trump truly cared about violence on our streets and crime, then he wouldn't have diverted $800 million in funding that Congress appropriated for law enforcement efforts, for violence prevention efforts, for child protective services efforts. He has literally defunded the police. And so then he turns around and wants to occupy our streets. That's not acceptable.
What we are seeing is there's 24-hour surveillance with ICE agents. They're doing 2 shift changes a day, which we find to be extremely problematic, right? Because they're in the room with this individual, which can lead to some HIPAA violations. He's not being allowed to receive the proper medical treatment that he needs. He hasn't been allowed one phone call. And so we're going to do everything we can. We're going to pull every legislative lever as well as every legal lever to make sure he gets the representation that he deserves.
You reference ICE, they're potentially violating HIPAA. We've seen them violate certainly local ordinance, I'm sure that this, and the state has something to say in court right now about the legality of what the Trump administration is doing with the National Guard, seemingly acting beyond any sort of law or attempts to regulate them right now. You also deciding to put yourself physically there as a leader. Why did you feel like that was the appropriate step to take?
Look, as an elected official, I made a commitment to advocate, to represent, and to fight for my constituents. And that means all of my constituents, despite their status here in this country. And when a stakeholder of my ward calls me and says that his institution is now living in fear over a presence of federal agents, I have an obligation to make sure that I am standing alongside my community leaders in keeping our constituents safe. In that moment, it meant that I was going to be at the hospital with the president of the hospital demanding that ICE not be there and advocating for the individual that at that moment needed medical treatment. He had severe trauma to his leg, and we needed to ensure that he can receive the treatment that he needed without any interruption by these ICE agents, right? And so there are moments that sometimes it causes for me to mobilize on the phone. Sometimes it calls me to knock on doors and make sure the constituents are okay after the trauma caused by ICE. Sometimes it calls for me to be there in the moment to make sure I'm advocating for those that are most vulnerable. I think that it's important to know that organizing and representing your constituents can come in many different formats. There are those of us that I think have the privilege of being able to do so. I currently don't have children, right? And I can take risks in a way that maybe some of my colleagues who have children that they need to go home to at night cannot. And so there are ways to lead in this moment that don't look like last Friday. But staying silent is definitely not the answer here. I believe there needs to be an avenue in which we are investigating and prosecuting these agents for the harm that they are causing. I'm willing to leverage every legislative tool and political and social capital that I have to see that that happens here in the city of Chicago. I know the governor is filing every lawsuit possible to make sure that we are slowing down the deployments of the National Guard and the deployments of the ICE agents. We also need to be looking at the presence of Border Patrol, right? Within the realm of Border Patrol, they're supposed to be 100 miles from the border. Well, we're 211 from the Canada border, so I just don't know why they're here. And I think we need to be looking at every single opportunity that we can to file the lawsuits, to pull legislative levers so that we can protect the residents of the city of Chicago.
Would you like to see Chicago police enforcing those ICE-free zones? That was a question the mayor got just the other day.
Oh, absolutely. I would love if CPD can enforce our local laws that we've passed. Look, right now, ICE agents and federal agents are violating several laws, right? They're violating our mask ordinance. They shouldn't be wearing masks. They should be identifying themselves. They're still driving in unmarked vehicles, not announcing themselves when they're raiding workplaces, homes, churches, and all these other spaces. And now we have an executive order that has created ICE-free zones, and we should be enforcing the law. We also need to find ways to do that doesn't put people in harm's way, right? What we are watching are Gestapo-like tactics, a militarization of law enforcement that can be extremely dangerous for anyone that's enforcing the law. And so we need to ensure that we protect our police officers and protect our residents. So we're looking for all the ways to make sure that we can get these individuals to follow local law and ensure that they're protecting constitutional. Look, there are so many states around the city of Chicago that don't survive without Chicago. And the damage that Trump is causing to
Sorry, can I get you to expound on that and like just spell out for people who aren't from the Chicagoland area, what do you mean by that there are so many communities that rely on Chicago?
Absolutely. Without our tax revenue, there are so many other municipalities that don't generate the revenue that's needed to keep their cities afloat. And if we are financially impacted in the ways that we are already seeing across our city, it just doesn't impact the city of Chicago. It impacts the entire ecosystem of our country. The entire Midwest is impacted when the city of Chicago doesn't perform appropriately. And so we have to start understanding that this is not just about a blue city dot in the middle of the state of Illinois being attacked for being a welcoming city. Our entire region will be impacted by the actions of Donald Trump. And I think we have to fully start articulating what that means for individuals so that they stop empowering a man that's seeking to be a king and a dictator. He talks about wanting to make the city safer, but then we have to ask, make the city safer for who? Because it's not for black and brown communities. Those are the communities that are under attack. When you think about what we've been seeing in our communities, I'll just give you an example of what was happening Friday. Friday morning, ICE agents went to a Walmart. They picked up about 7 individuals because they were working on a work site. Not because they were doing anything wrong, not because they had a criminal record, but because they were brown and Spanish speaking. 3 of them citizens who were arrested without due process, who were abused during the interaction. 1 had to leave with a concussion. There is a woman that has been shot. There's a man that's been killed. There have been pregnant women who have been tear gassed and pepper sprayed. We have violated freedom of the press. There are journalists that are being shot